he is good. For he is good. Give thanks to the Lord. For he is good. For he is good. Give thanks to the Lord. For he is good. For he is good. His love endures forever.
His love will reign
forevermore.
His power will reign
forevermore.
His grace will reign
forevermore.
His peace will reign
forevermore.
His love will reign
forevermore.
His power will reign
forevermore.
His love endures forever.
The title of my sermon this morning is From Mammon to Heaven. I apologize if it sounds cheesy. I'm not, as I mentioned before, I'm not used to giving titles to my sermon. I've only done that since I came to Central North. So, the text that Brother Shane just read to us, all right, clearly explains, gives us an idea of what I'm going to talk about. But this word mammon, it is written in the New King James Version, right? So when I was a bit younger and I was reading this verse, I kept wondering, as a child, what is this mammon? Is mammon the devil? Is that Satan? Right? But, as you can see from the text that Brother Shane just read to us, mammon means wealth. It's taken from the Greek word mammonas, which basically means, wealth, material wealth, or worldly riches, basically money, as it's translated. Right? So I know, some brethren do feel that, I should not be preaching about money, about wealth, during a sermon, right? But we cannot deny that our world is so entwined in money. We operate on money, we run on money. Why do we work? I believe, many of you like me, we are not born with silver spoons in our mouth. We need to work, work to make a living. That's the main reason for us to work, isn't it? Who works for fun? Who would like to work for fun and not be paid? All right, we all work for money, all right? You can enjoy your job, but yes, that's a different thing. All right, so why did I decide to speak on this? All right, because recently I had a heated discussion with, some close people close to me about the prosperity gospel. Now, if you have not heard about the prosperity gospel, it's the so-called gospel that teaches on health and wealth and happiness. So these followers of the prosperity gospel, they believe that God wants their believers to be richly blessed in this life, and that physical well-being and material riches are always God's will for the faithful. Poverty and illness are seen as curses. So, and according to one of the popular prosperity preachers from Singapore, he says that you are called by the Lord to be a success, to enjoy wealth, to enjoy health, and to enjoy a life of victory. It is not the Lord's desire that you live a life of defeat, poverty, and failure. So it was discussed that, if you became a Christian with the intention of being rich, then it is wrong. But if you are materially blessed as a consequence of being faithful, then there is nothing wrong with that. Now, brethren, I do not disagree with that statement, but I disagree with the idea that as a Christian, we deserve to be physically blessed with health and wealth. You are not entitled to be rich and free of illness as a result of your faith. Even if your faith can move mountains, you can still be poor and sick. And nowhere in the Bible did God ever promise us that we will be free of sickness and poverty, let alone being wealthy. Now, to say that health and wealth is an evidence of your faith is also arrogant and inconsiderate to the many faithful Christians that are physically weak and living in poverty. And this is indeed what some of those that follow this prosperity gospel believe. If a believer remains chronically sick, then it is said that they have either failed to claim their healing, which they rightfully deserve because of the death of Jesus Christ. And their faith becomes suspect, or that they have some sin in their life for which they are sick, and their sickness is a result of God's divine judgment. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 24 reads, "Who himself bore our sins in his own body on the tree, that we, having died to sins, might live for righteousness, by whose stripes you were healed." Okay, this is the fulfillment of the prophecy in Isaiah chapter 53, verse 5, which also reads similarly. Okay, but he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement for our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we are healed. Now, those preachers and those followers of the prosperity gospel, they like to use this verse, by his stripes we are healed. Okay, by his wounds here. By his stripes means by his wounds we are healed. Okay, so by Jesus' physical punishment, they claim that his followers are healed. Now, healing here can be both, either spiritual or physical healing. However, in the context of these two verses that I put up here, okay, you can see that these verses, they refer to sin, transgressions, all right, and righteousness. They do not refer to sickness or disease. So being healed in these verses mean being forgiven and saved, not physical healing. 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 7 to 10. Okay, here Paul describes the thorn in his flesh like a messenger of Satan, okay, which he had for over 14 years, okay, sent to buffet him. And he had prayed to God many times to remove it. So why was he not free of this? Was it because Paul was poor in faith? I'm sure Paul has, stronger faith than many who are healthier than him. And is it because his sin was not forgiven? Then why is he an apostle of God? So you can see here that, health is not something a faithful Christian deserves. And the same thing applies to material wealth. Nowhere in the Bible are we promised physical riches. Okay, God can choose to bless us with abundant riches or not to bless us with any at all. It is his right to give, but it is not our right to receive. So what is wealth? Wealth is an abundance of valuable possessions or money. When we have wealth, we have more than what we need to sustain a normal life. Okay, so, and then there are the others who go the extreme, okay, and, what we will call a poverty gospel, right? Because they believe that wealth is wrong. And if someone has more than enough, he or she should spread it around equally, right? The term I learned from Kong Jo's economic lesson last week was socialism. Others say that wealth is the result of hard work and wise investments, and no one else has any claim to it. Again, from Kong Jo, this is capitalism. Right? I'm not an accountant, and I don't have a background in finance and economics. Okay, so I'm probably not the best person to be teaching you about all these economic terms. Right? But what I know is our attitude towards money is more important than what we do with the money that's been given to us. Right, one of the often misquoted verse is 1 Timothy 6:10. Right, that says, "For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil, for which some have strayed from the faith in their greediness and pierced themselves through with many sorrows." Right, so it is here, if you read properly, it is the love of money or greediness, or in Bible language, covetousness, that leads to evil choices, not money or wealth itself. Having wealth is not sinful and certainly not offensive to God. He had often blessed those who were faithful to him with abundant material wealth. If you look at, Genesis 13 verse 2, you can see an account of Abraham being very rich, or rather Abram at that stage being very rich in livestock, silver, and in gold. And then next in chapter 30, verse 43, we also read about Jacob, who was exceedingly prosperous, had large flocks, many servants and animals. And of course, the most famous will be King Solomon in 1 Kings 10:23. He surpassed all the kings of the earth in riches and wisdom. So although God can bless his servants with riches, wealth has never been an accurate barometer, or measure of a person's faith, and should never be used as that. Some righteous people can remain poor for their entire lives, while some wicked people are filthy rich. Psalm 73 verse 3, in the psalm by this psalmist, "For I was envious of the boastful when I saw the prosperity of the wicked." Again in Jeremiah 12 verse 1. Here we can see that the wicked again can be prosperous. All right, so wealth, whether you are rich, whether you are poor, is not because of whether you are faithful or not. You are not faithful. All right, God determines, how much or what you get in life. So our attitude towards money, towards wealth, should be more important than how much we have in our life. So what are these attitudes or these principles that we should apply, to this wealth that has been given to us? Right. Even though wealth is not guaranteed to us on this earth, God does give everyone an opportunity to gain wealth. And for those who have made it, sometimes they say, nobody gave me the wealth because I earn it myself through all my own hard work and my hands. The children of Israel thought the same as well. But Moses reminded them that it was God who was blessing them based solely on his sovereign will. Deuteronomy 8:17-18. "Then you say in your heart, my power and the might of my hand have gained me this wealth. And you shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you power to get wealth, that he may establish his covenant, which he swore to your fathers, as it is this day." Now, if you remember my sermon last month, I quoted one of my favorite actors, as I mentioned before, Denzel Washington. And he says, one of the most important lessons in life that you should know is to remember to have an attitude of gratitude, of humility. But more to that, understand where the gift comes from. It is not mine. It's been given to me by the grace of God. So Denzel, if you all know him, he is a very popular and successful, probably one of the most, best, considered best actors of his generation. And he had successes. He was successful in all his ventures, in his acting, and yet he constantly reminds himself, that it is all from God. For we know that from Psalm chapter 24, verse 1, "The earth is the Lord's and all its fullness, the world and those who dwell therein." Everything we have with us today in this earth, it is a gift from God. And that does not just include money or wealth. Also included will be our health, the talents that we have, the families, the friends, the time, everything that we have on this earth comes from God. Therefore, we should always be grateful and be thankful to God, who is the provider of it all. And you should also realize that no matter how much you have, ultimately, they all still belong to God and they are not yours to keep. In the verses that we read before, that was about the parable of the unjust steward. And he did not own any of the money, but he manages it for his employer. Similarly, we are merely God's stewards or God's managers of whatever that he has assigned to us to care for. So we are talking about stewardship, right? Faithful stewardship isn't about how much you have, but how you use what you have been given. The parable of the talents in Matthew chapter 25, verses 14 to 30. Okay, I didn't put the verses here. You can read because there are quite a lot of them. All right, teaches us that, God rewards each person's faithfulness. Okay, not based on what he has, not to compare the different talents that they've got, but what they do with it. And if God has blessed you with wealth, then you ought to humbly thank him and realize that you have a great responsibility. Abundance isn't God's provision for you to live a life of luxury. It is his provision to you to help others live. And also, you have been entrusted with this money to grow his kingdom. Likewise, not being financially blessed does not mean that you cannot help to advance God's kingdom. If you have been blessed with little, that can still be put to good use for God's purpose. We remember the story of the widow and her 2 mites in Mark chapter 12, verse 41 to 44. Jesus observed this woman who had only 2 mites, and when she came, to give the money to the treasury, she gave the entire 2 mites that she had with her. She gave all that she had, which was her entire means of subsistence, compared to the other rich people who might have given more than her, but to them that's just a small portion of what they had. God judges us by how much we keep for ourselves, not by how much we give. We also have other examples of how the first century Christians behaved with their money in Acts chapter 4, 32 to 37. You can see that many of them, they sold their possessions, their lands, houses, and then they brought everything, to the apostles' feet to share, to distribute with those who are in need. How can this, people be that generous? Because they had their heart right with God, and their heart was tied to God, but not to their worldly possessions. Luke 12:15 says, "And he said to them, 'Take heed and beware of covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of things he possesses.'" These early Christians, they were not clinging to their riches like the fool in the parable of the rich fool that we read from Luke chapter 12, verse 16 to 21. Right? Who only thinks about the now, the world that he lives in, not realizing that it is the eternity that he will be headed to very shortly. So, as Christians today, that will be a reminder of us that, we should also aim to give to God first, in whatever blessing that he has bestowed upon us. Do we do that in our lives? If not, this is probably a time to think about it, right? We could think about having a fixed amount to give to God. I'm not talking about tithing here. I'm not, preaching on tithing. But, if you want to give 10%, why not, But my point is we should not be giving any leftovers to God. We don't gather up crumbs that fall from our table and donate it as charity, right? We take off a portion of what we have and give it. But does God need our money? Obviously not. But giving to God reminds us that what we have comes from God. Now, the early Christians, they were able to give away everything, so much of their wealth, to help the church. How can they do that? That brings us to the second attitude towards wealth. It involves trust. It involves trust and trusting that God knows what is best and provides for all our needs. Philippians 4:19 says, "And my God shall supply all your need according to his riches in glory by Christ Jesus." Non-Christians trust in their money. They need to see the dollar signs in their bank account, all right, and to be secure, to know that, all right, I have this amount of money, right, I should be able to get through in case anything happens. But for us Christians, our trust is with God. We trust that God will provide, and not just, trust that, we must have that money. Like the rich young ruler that sought Jesus' counsel in Matthew chapter 19, verse 21 to 22. All right, he had everything. He had money, he had kept the law and all that. But when it comes to separating from his material possessions, he finds that most challenging. All right, because he needs that for his security. Now, I'm not asking us to go and sell everything you've got, and then just not do anything. Just trust in God. God will provide. No. But what I'm saying is that we should not be having our security in mammon, in wealth, but having our trust in God. We walk in faith. We do not walk in fear. We don't worry about what could happen, because worry itself creates that threat before it happens, even if it doesn't happen. And all our decisions should be driven by our faith, not by our fear. Matthew 6:25 to 26 says, "Therefore I say to you, do not worry about your life, that you will eat or what you will drink, nor about your body, what you will put on. It's not life more than food, and the body more than clothing? Look at the birds of the air, for they neither sow nor reap, nor gather into barns, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not of more value than they?" So if God can provide for all his creations, animals, birds and all that, what more are we? Why would God not provide for us? Right, and then the third thing, the third attitude that I want to talk about would be contentment. Now godliness with contentment is great gain, for we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain that we can carry nothing out of it. And having food and clothing, with this we shall be content. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation and the snare, and into many foolish and harmful lusts which drown men in destruction and perdition. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil, for which some have stayed from the faith in their greediness and pierced themselves with many sorrows. 1 Timothy 6 to 10. Contentment. It is the state of being satisfied and at peace and emotionally fulfilled with what one has or with the circumstance that they find themselves in. Whether we have been blessed with many things or few things, we should accept that as our lot and not complain about it. Right? But that does not mean that, I'm not saying that we do not work at all. There's this movement, the FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early. You get people that want to get financial freedom early and flexibility early in life so that they do not have to work and they could, enjoy life, do whatever they like. Stay at home, watch Netflix, watch YouTube, chill. But no, that's not what I'm saying here. We still ought to be diligent and hardworking, for God created us for work. Genesis 2:15. God put man in the garden to tend and to keep it. Tend, this is from the Hebrew word avad, which means to work, to toil. So work is good. It is not a result of sin, like some people say. And we ought to be productive as well. And whatever we do heartily for God and not for man. And we should fully utilize our potential. Right? And this, I do not mean only for monetary gains. Because, as I mentioned before, whatever blessings we have, they are from God. Even our families, even our children. So if a woman doesn't work, making money, what she does at home as a homemaker, as a mother, still counts as work. And that's still being a good steward of what God has blessed her with. Second Thessalonians 3:10 outlines this principle. For even when we were with you, we have commanded you this: if anyone will not work, neither shall he eat. So those who do not want to work shall not eat. And verses 8 to 9, which were before this, reads, "Nor did we eat anyone's bread free of charge, but work with labor and toil night and day, that we might not be a burden to any of you, and because we do not have authority, but to make ourselves an example of how you should follow us. So the apostles themselves, Paul himself, also worked, right, for his subsistence. He did not just rely on handouts from others. And we know, that Paul himself was a tent maker. And that was his job, even though he was more or less a full-time worker of God. So, I'm not also saying that we should all be workaholics, but we work for our living and to set examples for others, just as Paul. Philippians. Okay, so, right, I think I missed a verse there. So Philippians 4:11-12 reads, "Not that I speak in regard to need, for I have learned in whatever state I am to be content. I know how to be abased, and I know how to be abound. Everywhere and in all things I have learned both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need." So Paul's attitude here shows that, it comes from recognizing and being satisfied with God's provision in one's life. So any abundance beyond that necessary for our daily sustenance is a gift from God, and we are to use it wisely. We should not be like the prodigal son who spent everything that he had and then rely on Centrelink. Okay, we should be good stewards. We should budget our spending or curb our spending. Our spending should not be based on our desires, but should be based. Our spending should be based, not on our desires or our income. We should not be buying things out of greed and ending up in debt, because there is always something that is new, that's shinier. And we keep thinking life is going to be better if I had that new thing. Right? So, being a good steward of what God has given to us requires a lot of planning. Hebrews 13:5 reads, "Let your conduct be without covetousness, be content with such things as you have. For he himself has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you." All right? So another thing that we can also do with what God has blessed us is, can be read from Ecclesiastes 11:1-2. New King James, it is not very clear, but in the NIV, it makes more sense that ship your grain across the sea. After many days, you may receive a return. Invest in 7 ventures, yes, in 8. You do not know what disaster may come upon the land. So this shows that we should also plan for rainy days ahead with our money, that God has blessed us with. In the parable of the talents in Matthew chapter 25, verse 27 reads, "So you ought to have deposited my money with bankers, and at my coming I would have received back my own interest." This is basically talking about, using our money to work for us, so that we ourselves do not constantly focus on just, working and not focusing on God. If God has blessed us with more than enough, instead of spending it all, we can use that for other purposes. But however, what's more important is, Jesus said what we should be investing in is in the kingdom of God. Matthew 6:19-21 says, "Do not lay up treasures for yourselves on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart is also." How we treat God's blessing here on earth will determine our treasures, okay, that are up there in heaven for us. I guess in a way, the accounting term that you can use is like franking credits, isn't it? All right, whatever you pay in tax here, okay, you get it back in heaven one day. So what we are doing here in earth is setting up our heavenly account to create dividends, setting us up for true riches in heaven one day. So in conclusion, it is not wrong to ask for material blessings, but it is wrong if that becomes the sole focus in our life. Okay, like what the prosperity gospel teaches, When that becomes the purpose of us wanting to be rich, to be wealthy, then that means we are serving mammon, and wealth has become our idol. So the question is, what is the motivation behind us wanting more wealth, more in everything that we've got? Our attitude towards our wealth and how we manage our finances, God will see all that, and He will know whether we can be entrusted with bigger things. But having more is also not necessarily better for us, because with more wealth also comes more responsibility. Mark 10:25 says, "It is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God." So if you want more, then, that depends on, whether God thinks that you are able to handle more. If you have been given 5 talents, you also expect to produce another 5 talents, compared to a person who has only been given 1 talent. If he can produce 2 talents, or even he's already doing better than you. I'd like to end with these wise words of Agur in Proverbs chapter 30, verse 8 to 9, that says, "Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with the food allotted to me, lest I be full and deny you, and say, 'Who is the Lord?' Or lest I be poor and steal, and profane the name of my God." So this proverb talks about moderation, which I believe that's the attitude that we all should have. All right, so if there's anyone who need prayers, because of your financial difficulties or any help, feel free to let us know. But more importantly is we are all heading towards heaven, and that is where we should set our sights.
His love endures forever.
Everybody give thanks
To the Lord, for He is good.